Hello, international business folks. Hopefully, you're watching this lecture in the comfort of your home or your room. Uh, and there might not be 10 inches of snow outside, but there'll probably be at least 5 or so, and it'll be a mess. So, at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning would be a challenge for, I think, a number of folks. So, the best laid plans have to change sometimes. So, let me try to cover some key concepts that we're going to touch base on tomorrow. And I'll see you for Thursday for specific questions. Checking in a few things. The syllabus quiz I will post up on Blackboard by the end of Tuesday. So if you've never taken a syllabus quiz or a quiz on Blackboard, you'll see it. It'll be available, and just complete it before the classes on Thursday, please. It won't take you much time. Just read through the syllabus. Gosh, it's even open book. Can't beat that. Checking in on your researching and networking international assignment. Keep in mind that's due a week from Tuesday. Hard copy. In class, we'll discuss some of our findings. Remember, you're recommending a go, no-go decision. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go. Also, keep in mind, I'm looking for 2 visits to the Writing Center at some point this semester. It doesn't necessarily have to happen this next week, but you do gain or lose points by not using the Writing Center. And that form is posted on Blackboard under the network research assignment. Next, checking company projects. I've heard from, I would say, about 30-40% of the teams currently. Thank you. Send me your section number, your team names, and then hopefully a couple of your proposed companies. I'm sorry for some of you that have proposed companies that have been done a lot in the last year. It's just hard. It's hard to do companies we've really pounded the contacts. There's a lot of other redundant research done by students out there. So normally I like to sit at least a year and a half on some popular companies. So, so again, if you haven't totally figured that out, I'm going to be in my office by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Please come see me and we'll talk through. But we really need to have companies and teams decided by tomorrow, because I'll go through and then individually sign you all up on your GMMSO 4 accounts. And if you had a problem with your GMMSO account getting signed on, please let me know in advance. I appreciate that. And then for Thursday, remember you've got your first KBOSH readings for Canada and Mexico. We'll discuss those. We'll compare and contrast those. And we'll also get into Porter's Forces. Porter's might be a new name to you, but the concepts are not. They're marketing terms. They're fundamental marketing terms about threat of substitutes, competitiveness, supplier power, things like that. So buyer power. And I will be posting readings for Thursday later tomorrow for you. So with this, let's get to wrapping up the assessing the international environment, which is a key objective of the course. We had the 5 categories. And, I wish I had a mirror. It doesn't look too good on videotapes. I don't know if you'll be able to read that. But those were the 5 categories we've been talking about: economics, technology, global business, social, cultural, and competition and growth. Sorry, I don't have a really fancy recording studio here. I mean, if you look around, gosh, behind me looks like I've got antlers coming out of my head. By the way, those are sheds, not a real animal, okay? We're just making the best of it here. It's snowing like crazy outside right now. So if you go to the presentation packet on assessing international environments and go to international labor rates, you'll see a quick slide that will give you an idea of labor costs in the world approximately. And, pause this video. I challenge you, just pause it here right now and try to write down 3, 4, 5 things that go into labor, okay? It's not just about the wage or the hourly, but what are the other cost factors that go into paying people? So pause it. This is hilarious. Maybe you paused, maybe you didn't. But all of you know the hourly rate. That's a pretty common thing. Another factor would be benefits. Your health care, especially in the U.S. What percent of every dollar do you think, on top of every dollar you earn, goes into health care in your pay? Rule of thumb for good companies, for every dollar we pay an employee, we probably invest 30 to 35 cents on top of that for health care. Other factors, 401k or retirement programs in the U.S., they're not mandated. Most companies will actually hopefully match a minimum of 3%. Good companies are 5 or 8% after 5 years or so many years with the company. Some companies will go a little bit higher. Again, people can put up to 15 to 20% of their income in the 401ks, which are IRAs, retirement plans. In other countries, sometimes the employer is mandated. In my experience, in places like Indonesia, I put 20% in each employee's budget. Malaysia, 15%. China was less. But in those cases, the country's actually mandated. Other costs on top of that can be not just benefits, but training. Some countries mandate so much percent a year that employees have 20 hours of training. Keep in mind, labor is affected by the number of holidays. The U.S. is, 9 or 10 holidays. Some countries have up to 20 holidays. That affects the productivity and the cost. So all of these factors come into play. And it's not a surprise. You'll see, I think, Switzerland, Australia, some Scandinavian, and some European countries very high here. And at the very bottom, it's usually, the bottom of the pyramid or chase where they're making T-shirts or putting sneakers together. Bangladesh, Pakistan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, places like that. Those are manufacturing. For service, it depends upon the language. Some banks are using the Philippines highly now. They use India, as you may know. They may use Eastern Europe. They may use Mexico. Other places, because all they have to do is build a satellite system and they can tap in and they can service your bank, your checking account, your insurance account, etc. So labor is a fluctuating thing, but most companies these days, we spend a lot of time trying to automate processes, especially in the U.S. We're not the most expensive place on labor, but we spend a lot of time thinking, one, how can we avoid labor? How can we automate it? It's not just the labor, it's also the benefit cost, as we talked about, the difference between trying to forecast benefit costs long term in the U.S. versus Canada. And some companies have diversified themselves to Canada because whether you agree or disagree with national health, they have it, and it helps the company predict and maintain a certain budget of insurance costs in those types of countries. So there's a lot that goes behind a labor cost, and the U.S. is not the highest, we're certainly not the cheapest. The other piece is there's actually a productivity number for every country. And I don't have those numbers at the top of my head. The U.S. is pretty high. We're not the highest usually. You'd be surprised that some of the Scandinavian countries actually hit highest productivity per capita. That has to do with technology and innovation. But that's productivity per capita per GDP, often a number that we compare ourselves internationally against other countries. So labor relates. Labor. Those are labor rates, if you're interested. Next, I have an example. I don't know if you've had any opportunity to ever hear or see or visit a Zara's. There are now quite a few in the U.S. I was in Manhattan a year ago. I mean, there were like 6 Zara's in Manhattan alone. I think Zara's is a really good example of a company that has come on in 15 years, in the last 10 years really accelerated. It is an area of clothing which no one thought could be revolutionized. No one thought there could be disruptive big changers of it. When I was in your shoes in college, everyone talked about the Gap. The Gap took clothing that took a year to make and brought it down to 90 days to 6 months. They thought that was revolutionary at the time. And Zara's, what they have literally done is that their own private brands or their own special fashion brands, which their customers normally crave because they come out with them very quick, very chic, very current, they can get something to market in less than 21 days. They do that by controlling the whole process out of their Madrid headquarters. They can design it, they can produce it, they can manufacture it, and get it distributed to their stores. Then the other 50%, they do what I call the boring clothes, the things that I wear, things that are pretty standard, been around quite a while, classic garments. we call classic garment lines, and they can outsource some of those. But the the fancy stuff and the stuff they really make their money on is the trend clothing. And Zara's, when you start doing your projects, some of you are going to start looking at revenue per square feet. Nobody touches Zara's on the amount of revenue that they can make per square feet. Their stores, they're not huge, and they're not tiny. They're comfortable. Historically, they were women's brands. They have broken into men's, but they're still a powerhouse in women's clothing. And as they've grown, they're able to grow in the large cities of emerging markets. Other things that have helped them out are the advances in technology and types of clothing, or the cloth. The cloth has gotten better. It can be stitched better. It can hold up better. It can be transported better. It doesn't spoil. I mean, these are all things that Zara's takes a look at. So they can get things fast to market. It has an average hanger life of 2 weeks. They prefer not to do sales. Their customers kind of become addicts. It's like, hey, I haven't been to Zara's in 2 weeks. I want to go back in and see what they have. They're always turning stuff over. Their price point is by no means a Nordstrom. It's not a high price point. And, it's not a Target or other lower entry or cost price points. I would say when people look at the price, they say, okay, not exactly what I'd consider a bargain, but not expensive, and it's a nice piece of clothing, I'll buy it. So they have become a quick option for events that go on in people's lives or day-to-day clothing altogether. So Zara's, you can take a look, click on the link in the presentation if you want to hear a little Spanish music and see and feel a little bit of Zara's flair there. Looking at a couple of Zara's notes, just checking there, they have a 55% higher gross margin because they don't discount, and because they've done so well, now they have lots of capital. They've done well, they have lots of money. The founder of Zara's, and the person who was the founders of IKEA, who passed away in the last year, were amongst the top 5 wealthiest people in the world most recently. So new technology, new ways of doing it, reinventing an industry that no one thought could be reinvented, frankly. So I think Zara's is a great example. Look it up, check it out. And when you're in an international city, stop in one and look at it. As for other examples, I often wrap this unit up just talking about an opportunity I had around 2000 when I was living in Spokane. My wife and I were thinking of going abroad again. It was the right time for our family. And we put out a couple feelers, one with the employer I was with, Pitney Bowes, one with a previous employer, American Express. And there's no doubt there's a lot of risk in going abroad, and you know that risk is associated with return, although it can fall apart too. And long story short is that through networking, within a matter of 6 or 7 months, we had a couple of great international opportunities. One was in London, one ended up in Malaysia. And, as much as Europe sounds attractive, you have to look at the business plan. Even in your own career, when you're looking at jobs, maybe the first job is getting a job for the sake of a job, but long term, to position yourself and develop yourself, market yourself, develop your own brand, you have to look at what the assignment is. Hopefully it's cutting edge, it's advancing you just like a cutting edge athlete, and therefore it's going to make you more marketable in the long term. And so in my case, the opportunity with American Express to return to Southeast Asia was a business case where they wanted to build the world's largest global authorization hub, which means whenever you charge an American Express card, you swipe it, it goes through a lot of automated decisioning, but it can also end up with a person. It could end up to a person for a couple of reasons. One, the automated decisioning, the AI has said, oh, this might not be that person, they're out of pattern, they're spending more than they normally have been. Gosh, they were in this country yesterday, they're in this country today, we need to talk to them, okay? And so I would say 2% of all credit card transactions go to what we call as a representative. And at the time, American Express was interested in looking at positioning that within house. They wanted control of it, yet in Malaysia. Now, Malaysia sounds like an odd place. Why or how could, most Americans think Malaysia, jungles, Muslim country. how could that possibly become a headquarters for a large global authorization financial services operation? The reason being is I had worked there 10 years earlier, and one of the most natural resources of Malaysia when assessing an international environment is their lingual ability. Malaysians not only speak Malay, which would be the native national language called Bahasa, but they speak English very well. If they're Chinese Malay, they speak at least 3 dialects of Chinese: Mandarin, Cantonese, maybe Fujian, maybe Hokkien. They may speak Indian dialects, they may speak Hindi or Tamil, as well as Tagalog from the Philippines, and some Japanese. So it really had the potential not just to cover English-speaking countries, but also Asian-speaking countries. So long story short, natural resource was there, not the cheapest labor market in the world, but probably 30, 35, 40% less cost than the U.S. Also, technically, remember looking at technology, very strong technical infrastructure, that of like Silicon Valley, because when you're doing authorization charges, things have to move like in nanoseconds. If someone is at Harrods in London, it's not uncommon for a customer to spend $200,000, $300,000 in a day. You don't want them delayed, but you need to make sure it's that person, it's not a fraud, et cetera, and you want that transaction to go well. You don't want to interrupt the customer's purchasing process. So technology, people, politically stable, other pieces, culturally, a very sensitive, kind, service-oriented culture. So they make wonderful, they have just really good labor productivity for servicing, problem solving, and high satisfaction for customers wherever they are in the world. English accent a little bit British, but solid English when they have to speak it. Anything else unique that one would have to think about? I think infrastructure. And they were also offering what we call Operation Headquarters status. So if it became an international HQ, they would give tax benefits. And that way you weren't necessarily taxed on all the revenues that were coming through the country at that same time. So all of those things were factors here in assessing an international environment that I had to take a look at. I didn't know that September 11th was going to happen. I realized September 11th was something that happened when all of you were very young. It did make us pause. It made my wife and I stop and think, are we going to go to a Muslim country? Can we do this? It definitely stopped us for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I do everything we did in this course. We networked. I spoke with alumni that were in Malaysia. They confirmed that most of the CNN information, the information on Bloomberg, was all false. It was inaccurate. Once I learned that, I pretty much had decided that I'm going to continue with this plan. And so I physically moved to Malaysia from Spokane. I left Pitney Bowes Corporation, moved back to American Express in October of 2001, and my family joined me by Thanksgiving. And the next 5 years was probably the most exciting assignment of my life. And the short of it was, when I left in 2005, they were servicing 12 different countries in 6 different languages. At that time, the largest amount of revenue in the world was going through Malaysia on credit cards of any other credit card issuer. And now when I go back and visit with my students, I go back about every 4 years with a international business Jan term to Southeast Asia. And we visit, I catch up with old friends, and some of them were your age when I hired them. And, this is almost, 18, 17 years ago. And now they're managers, they're directors, they're vice presidents, and they're servicing 24 different countries. And they've got 2,000 employees. So it's a very, very large operation and continues to grow and take on other factors just in authorization. So moral of the story, assess your international environments. There are moments of risk. Trust me, there are other stories I could tell where I turned around and said, no, that's too risky. We're not going to do that. But this one, it was a calculated risk, and it paid off. And it paid off for American Express, paid off for folks in Malaysia, paid off for me. So that's the short of it. Okay. I'm going to pause here and wrap it up. 20-minute lecture. That's pretty short. And just remind you that watch for the Blackboard quiz for syllabus. Syllabus quiz, I'll have that up by the end of Tuesday. The readings for Thursday will be up. You already have the KBOSH readings. And most important, just keep going on your research, international icebreaker type of project that you're doing. You're a week out on that, and hopefully you're breaking ground, have gotten your company going, and you're working on your company situational analysis. And aside from that, reach out to me if you don't have a company, 2, you're having problems signing on the GMMSO, or 3, you're hitting really big hitting challenges where you're not able to complete the research that you were hoping to do on your international research project. Otherwise, I'll see you Thursday morning. By the way, it will snow Wednesday night, but the forecast is for significantly less. The main reason I thought best for today is the snow picked up at 6 o'clock tonight, and it doesn't back off till 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, so it's just a peak time. And like I said, hopefully you're watching this, warm, safe, comfortable in your pajamas, enjoying a cup of coffee, and I'll see you Thursday. All right? Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening.